The Sad Story of Henry. Once an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. It went into a tunnel and squeaked through his funnel and wouldn't come out again. The engine's name was Henry. His driver and fireman argued with him, but he would not move. "The rain would spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes," he said. The guard blew his whistle till he had no more breath and waved his flags till his arms ached. But Henry still stayed in the tunnel and blew steam at him. "I'm not going to spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes for you," he said rudely. The passengers came and argued too, but Henry would not move. Then along came Sir Topham Hatt, the man in charge of all the engines on the island of Sodor. Everyone called him the Fat Controller. "We will pull you out," he said, but Henry only blew steam at him and made him wet. So they hooked a rope onto the front of Henry, and everyone pulled except the Fat Controller. "My doctor has forbidden me to pull," he said. They pulled and pulled, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. Then they tried pushing from the other end. "1, 2, 3, push," said the Fat Controller, but he didn't help. "My doctor has forbidden me to push," he said. They pushed and pushed and pushed, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. At last Thomas came along. The guard waved his red flag and stopped him. Everyone argued with Henry. "Look, it has stopped raining," they said. "Yes, but it will begin again soon," said Henry. "And what will become of my green paint with red stripes then?" So they brought Thomas up, and he pushed and pushed as hard as he could, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. At last even the Fat Controller gave up. "We shall take away your rails," he said, "and leave you here for always and always and always." They took up the old rails and built a wall in front of Henry so that he couldn't get out of the tunnel any more. All Henry could do was to watch the trains rushing through the other tunnel. He was very sad because he thought no one would ever see his lovely green paint with red stripes again. Time went by and Edward and Gordon would often go through the tunnel next to Henry. Edward would say, "Peep, peep, hello," and Gordon would say, "Poop, poop, poop, serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out. Soot and dirt from the tunnel had spoiled his lovely green paint and red stripes. He was cold and unhappy and wanted to come out and pull trains too. He wondered if he would ever be allowed to pull trains again. But he needn't have worried. A few days later, when Gordon burst his safety valve, the Fat Controller asked Henry to help. But that's another story. Thomas's train. Thomas the tank engine often grumbled to the other engines. "I spend all my time pulling coaches about ready for you to take out on journeys," he said one day. The other engines laughed. "Why can't I pull passenger trains too?" he asked. "You're too impatient," said Gordon. "You'd be sure to leave something behind." "Rubbish," said Thomas. "I'll show you." One night Thomas and Henry were alone in the shed. Henry was ill. The men worked hard, but he didn't get better. Henry felt just as bad next morning. He usually pulled the first train, and Thomas had to get Henry's coaches ready. If Henry is ill, Thomas thought, perhaps I shall pull his train. Thomas ran off happily to find the coaches. Come along, he fussed. There's plenty of time, grumbled the coaches. Thomas took them to the platform and wanted to run round in front at once, but his driver wouldn't let him. Don't be impatient, Thomas, he said. So Thomas waited and waited. The people got in. The guard and station master walked up and down. The porter banged the doors, and still Henry didn't come. Thomas got more and more excited. The Fat Controller came out of his office to see what was the matter, and the guard and the station master told him about Henry. Find another engine, he ordered. There's only Thomas, they said. You'll have to do it then, Thomas, said the Fat Controller. Be quick now. So Thomas ran round to the front and back down onto the coaches, ready to start. Don't be impatient, said his driver. Wait till everything is ready. But Thomas was too excited to listen. What happened then, no one knows. Perhaps they forgot to couple Thomas to the train. Perhaps Thomas was too impatient to wait till they were ready. Or perhaps the driver pulled the lever by mistake. Whatever it was, Thomas started. He ran along happily, and as he passed the first signal box, the men waved and shouted, but he didn't stop. They're waving because I'm such a splendid engine, Thomas thought importantly. Henry says it's hard to pull trains, but I think it's easy. Hurry, 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 he puffed, pretending to be like Gordon. People have never seen me pulling a train before, he thought. It's nice of them to wave. Thomas whistled, peep, peep, thank you, and hurried on. Then he came to a signal set at danger. Bother, he thought. I must stop, and I was going so nicely too. What a nuisance signals are. He blew an angry peep, peep on his whistle. The signalman ran up. Hello, Thomas, he said. What are you doing here? I'm pulling a train, said Thomas. Can't you see? Where are your coaches then? Asked the signalman. Thomas looked back. Why, bless me, he said, if we haven't left them behind. Yes, said the signalman. You'd better go back quickly and fetch them. Poor Thomas was so sad he nearly cried. Cheer up, Thomas, said his driver kindly. Let's go back quickly and try again. At the station, all the passengers were talking at once. They were telling the fat controller, the station master, and the guard what a bad railway it was. But when Thomas came back, they saw how sad he looked, and they couldn't be cross. He was coupled to the train, and this time he really pulled it. But for a long time afterwards, the other engines laughed at Thomas and said, Look, there's Thomas who wanted to pull a train but forgot about the coaches. Thomas and the guard. Thomas, the tank engine, is very proud of his branch line. He thinks it is the most important part of the whole railway. His two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle, agree with him. Annie can only take passengers, but Clarabelle can take passengers, luggage, and the guard. They are both old and need new paint, but Thomas loves them very much. As Thomas and his coaches run backwards and forwards along the line, they sing songs to each other. When Thomas starts from a station, he sings, Oh, come along, we're rather late. Oh, come along, we're rather late. And the coaches sing, We're coming along, we're coming along. They don't mind what Thomas says to them, because they know that he is trying to please the fat controller. And they know, too, that if Thomas is cross, he's not cross with them. One day they had to wait for Henry's train, which made Thomas very cross. How can I run my line properly if Henry is always late? He doesn't realize that the fat controller depends on me, Thomas whistled. He wanted to leave, but he had to wait for Henry's passengers. At last Henry came. Where have you been, lazy bones? Asked Thomas. Oh dear, my system is out of order. No one understands my case. You don't know how I suffer, moaned Henry. Rubbish, said Thomas. You're too fat and you need exercise. Lots of people with piles of luggage climbed out of Henry's train, and they all climbed into Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas had to wait until they were ready. At last the guard blew his whistle, and Thomas started at once. The guard turned round to step into his van, but Thomas had started without him. The guard waved his red flag to stop Thomas, but he was well on his way, steaming out of the station. Come along, puffed Thomas. But Clarabelle didn't want to come. I've lost my nice guard! I've lost my nice guard! She sobbed. Annie tried to tell Thomas what had happened. We haven't a guard! We haven't a guard! She said, but he was hurrying and wouldn't listen. Oh, come along! Oh, come along! He puffed. Annie and Clarabelle tried to put on their brakes, but they couldn't without the guard. Where is our guard? Where is our guard? They cried. But Thomas didn't stop till they came to a signal. Bother that signal, said Thomas. What's the matter? I don't know, said his driver. The guard will tell us in a minute. They waited and waited, but the guard didn't come. Peep, 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 peep. Where is the guard? Whistled Thomas. We've left them behind, sobbed Annie and Clarabelle together. The driver, the fireman, and the passengers looked, and there was the guard, running as fast as he could along the line. He had his flag in one hand and his whistle in the other. Everyone cheered him. He was very hot, so he had a drink, and then told them all about it. I'm very sorry, Mr. Guard, said Thomas. It wasn't your fault, Thomas, he replied. Look, the signal is down. We can go. Let's make up for lost time. Annie and Clarabelle were so pleased to have their guard again that they sang, as fast as you like, to Thomas all the way. They reached the end of the line quicker than ever before.